At the start of a new year, join Boise State Public Radio as we explore the important topic of how to transform stress into strength in order to build a more joyful, resilient life. Join moderator Gemma Gaudette and panelists Kimberly Henderson, April Masaryk, and Sophia Godkin on Tuesday, January 21st from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Idaho State Museum for this informative discussion. More details and registration is free on our website, boisestatepublicradio.org.
It's The Connector, Idaho Daily News for Wednesday, January 8th. Good morning. I'm Troy Oppie. The first bills out of the Idaho legislature this year will be divisive to some, celebratory to others. We'll discuss that. Plus, a long-planned development in Boise's east downtown gets approval, but for fewer units, condos for sale, not apartments for rent. And chronic wasting disease continues to spread in Idaho. All that and more coming up on The Connector. The Idaho legislature's first bill of the year blasts same-sex marriage, calling on the U.S. Supreme Court to let states once again regulate the relationship. James Dawson has more.
A 2015 Supreme Court decision legalized same-sex marriage nationwide over the objections of states like Idaho. Voters here overwhelmingly approved a constitutional amendment nearly a decade earlier, limiting marriage to between men and women. But Republican Representative Bruce Skog, who supports the non-binding resolution, says the issue isn't about that.
I see this as not an issue on same-sex marriage, but on judicial activism and states' rights.
If approved, a copy of the legislation will be sent to the U.S. Supreme Court. The second resolution, introduced Tuesday, applauds the Boise State women's volleyball team for refusing to play against a team with a transgender player. That came from Republican Representative Barbara Ehart.
San Jose State, of course, in Barbara Ehart's words, was cheating. San Jose State was playing with a biological male.
NCAA rules allow transgender women to play volleyball if they don't exceed a certain level of testosterone. Both resolutions were introduced unanimously, even by Democrats, and need a hearing before reaching the House floor. James Dawson, Boise State Public Radio News.
The executive director of Idaho's Democratic Party is resigning at the end of the month. The Idaho Capital Sun reports Jared DeLoof, who's led the state party since 2021, is taking a different job in the Boise area. State Democratic Party Chair Representative Lauren Necochea, in a statement, credited DeLoof's leadership in the effort, leading to a record number of Democrats appearing on ballots across the state this past November. Though most of those candidates were unsuccessful, Democrats have begun a search for his successor. A long-planned development on the east end of Boise's downtown is moving forward with fewer housing units, now mostly condos for sale instead of apartments for rent. Developer Tommy Alquist originally asked the city to build a large mixed-use building at 4th and Idaho. Previously, that's the downtown Idaho Central Credit Union. Neighbors, though, didn't like the plan because of the height and other aspects, so the city worked with Alquist to limit the planned height, mitigate other concerns, and ensure that 5% of the 100 units would be for low-income renters. Mayor Lauren McLean in 2021 cast the tie-breaking vote to approve the project. Construction began in 2023. Alquist this year decided to reduce the number of units in the building to 69, but keep the same height and footprint, and he had to return to the city to get approval to change the development agreement. Neighbors opposed to the project seized on the opportunity to try and sway the council to deny the change. Dan Everhart, speaking on behalf of the group Better Change for East Downtown, says the proposal could be a slippery slope.
The allowance for one may not be a reason to allow the next, but it might be a foot in the door for the next thing.
The council unanimously approved the change to the development agreement, even as they said they wished it could have stayed at the higher occupancy number. Here's Councilmember Jimmy Halliburton, who voted yes to the development nearly 4 years ago.
I would love to see more units there. I would love to see more units in different parts of town. And frankly, in an earlier meeting, had I not tried to reduce the height, we probably could have had more units there in the first place. But that's something that I did with concerns that I heard from the neighbors, was to try to go shorter.
Council members in their comments did urge developers to continue to protect trees on the property and limit construction activity to approved hours. Bureau of Land Management is temporarily closing roads and federal lands within the burn scar of this summer's paddock fire in order to protect wintering wildlife. State Fish and Game expect mule deer to struggle this winter due to the loss of forage area that was burned. More than 109,000 acres of the paddock fire was on BLM land. That's about 60% of the total area. The closure is through April. It only affects federal land. Motorized vehicles will still be allowed on county roads in the burn area. Chronic wasting disease is a deadly and incurable neurological illness. Idaho just received its second confirmed case in domestic elk. Abigail Moody has more.
Chronic wasting disease, or CWD, is a type of infectious illness not caused by viruses or bacteria, but instead by contact with misfolded proteins called prions. When prions enter the body, they can create a chain reaction of altering normal proteins. This causes neurological damage and eventually death. Scientists have only identified prion diseases in mammals. For CWD, it affects cervids, or animals with hooves like
deer, elk, moose, reindeer, caribou, red deer.
That is Professor Mark Zabel with the Prion Research Center at Colorado State University. CWD was first discovered in 1967 in Colorado, but has been found across the globe.
It's in Asia, Europe, and North America.
Zabel says CWD can be transferred directly, like from a sick moose to a healthy moose, as well as indirectly because prions,
unlike most other pathogens, it's very stable in the environment. So it can remain infectious in the environment, in soil and landscapes for years to decades.
Idaho first saw CWD in wild mule deer in 2021, but since December, there have been 2 confirmed cases of domestic elk from different farms, meaning they did not infect one another. CWD is difficult to see because it has a long incubation period, making an infected animal seem fine for 18 to 24 months before symptoms appear. Zabel tells me his main concern as a scientist is
this disease could spread to humans, so it has some zoonotic potential, similar to another prion disease that people might be aware of called bovine spongiform encephalopathy, or BSE, probably more commonly known as mad cow disease.
While mad cow disease can spread to humans by eating a sick animal, for now, CWD does not have that ability. Zabel encourages hunters to follow state practices to reduce the possible spread of CWD and to test their harvest before eating. There's no evidence yet that CWD can transfer from cervid to human, but Zabel says,
I would definitely not want to be the reference case. I don't want to be patient zero.
This past year, Idaho Fish and Game released hunting guidelines to reduce the spread of CWD. The agency also offers free testing kits for hunters to help track the disease by sending in samples of their game. Abigail Moody, Boise State Public Radio News.
And in sports, Boise State men's basketball improved to 7-1 at home on the season with an 81-59 win last night over UNLV. Broncos led by Tyson Degenhart with 21 points and 11 rebounds. That's the Connector for this Wednesday, January 8th. I'm Troy Oppie. Our news director is Sasha Woodruff. Our general manager is Tom Michael. You can always find more news at boisestatepublicradio.org and download our free app for your smartphone to take us with you on demand wherever you go.